I'm Brad Edwards. Thank you for joining us on the stream. Quite a day, quite a development. Merrick Garland, the Chicago-born Attorney General, the 86th of the United States, just made a statement in regards to the search of Mar-a-Lago, the home of the former President of the United States, Donald Trump. That took place on Monday. That was confirmed by Donald Trump. I want to bring in one of our experts and friends to the stream, Pat Brady, former head of the Republican Party here, but more importantly, former state and federal prosecutor. Pat, can you unpack this for me?
Yeah, it was a pretty brief statement. I think the Attorney General Merrick Garland did all he could do ethically and legally, but what he basically, the big announcement was they're going to unseal the the search warrant in the affidavit so we can know what the search warrant was all about. And I assume that the affidavit will be unsealed too, so we can know exactly what the case is all about. That'll probably answer a lot of questions without the Attorney General having to say it. So it's a big development, but I think he needed to do this, first of all, to keep his own employees from being upset about all the accusations made against him, and secondly, to quiet down the noise you're hearing from the far right of this big conspiracy that the Democrats have actually gone in and raided the president's house, former president's house.
Yeah, interesting thing here. It's almost turned into a bit of a game of chicken. And I don't say that lightly, because the president and his people confirmed it on Monday. Now, the AG coming out and saying, we're going to unseal this thing. Now, what is potentially the former president's move?
Well, I love or hate the guy from a public relations perspective. He really handed it to the Justice Department. You know, a lot of times these search warrants are executed, even here in Illinois. A lot of the search warrants that were executed in the Madigan investigation, we didn't know about for months. But what the president did here is got out front of it right away. And the Justice Department's not going to announce they're doing a search warrant. But he got out in front of it from a PR perspective, made these statements that it was a raid and broke into Melania's closet and they broke into his safe. But the reality is they had a lawfully executed search warrant, which meant that a magistrate, Bruce Reinhardt, the magistrate in Southern Florida, who's a friend of mine actually, signed off on this warrant. And for the president's statements, the former president's statements, to be taken at face value, that would require that probably 35 or 40 FBI agents conspired with the Justice Department, Merrick Garland and Chris Wray, the director of the FBI, who was a Trump appointee, to conjure up a bunch of evidence to get into the former president's home. I mean, it makes no sense. I mean, this is all lawful, but when we're dealing with Donald Trump and the way he operates, you got to be kind of prepared for that. And I think he won step one of the chess game. But now I think when the legal process rolls out, I think at the end of the day that Merrick Garland and Chris Wray will actually come out looking pretty good.
So let's just take a step beyond that into what actually was potentially found. We know sources telling a number of outlets that being sought through the subpoena were materials that were potentially taken from the White House, potentially sensitive to national security. What's the potential fallout from this, if it's indeed the case, what was obtained from Mar-a-Lago?
I think the top line's a 5-year felony. I mean, a long way from that. And even being charged, we're a long way from that. But the reality is, think about what the substance of this is. There were national security documents, top secret or even higher security, the highest security documents, that somebody in a Trump orbit took out of the White House. I mean, this is not like cleaning out your college dorm room because you don't want your mom to find stuff. You're leaving the White House, right? I mean, there's a protocol on what you can and cannot take. And I think that probably the biggest threat is what's in these national security documents that might put lives at risk that are out trying to protect our freedoms. I mean, that's probably the worst thing that could happen. But the reality is these aren't his documents. Why were they at his home? And why, I think probably what happened after this June meeting with the Justice Department and some of his folks, that somebody lied. I mean, that's what prompted a search warrant, which is a pretty drastic and intrusive thing to do versus another subpoena. And we know now, contrary to what we knew a couple of days ago, there was actually a subpoena issued before the search warrant came. So a lot more questions been answered, but I mean, there's definitely some potential criminal conduct here. I'm not saying that there is, including maybe lying to federal agents.
Okay. We help you, appreciate you being a friend of the stream and unpacking some of this for us. Pat Brady, former federal and state prosecutor, former head of the Illinois Republican Party. We know we've got a hard out with you right now, so we will let you go. Thank you, Pat Brady.
Thanks, Brad.
On that tip, we will see you soon, my friend. On that tip, we're going to bring in our legal analyst here at CBS 2 News. Irv Miller. Irv, did you see what Merrick Garland said, and what are your takeaways?
I did see it, and I'm happy he's going on the offensive, which is what he's doing. I'm surprised to hear that he's filing a motion in federal court in Florida to unseal the search warrant and the inventory of what was taken. That's half a step that'll get us to where we want to be, because apparently he's not moving to release the affidavit in support of the search warrant, the affidavit is what actually gives the basis for the probable cause. It's a sworn document that a judge reviews to determine whether or not to issue a search warrant. The search warrant itself, however, will give us a lot of information that we don't have today, particularly specifically what they were looking for and where the search warrant authorized them to look for in a room or a particular place, a safe. The search warrant will say where the officers, agents could go to look for any documents.
And will that release of information, will that also contain what the findings were? If they found boxes of apparently sensitive documents, will it give a checklist of what was found, and then also what was taken into government custody from, again, the former president's home in Florida, there, Mar-a-Lago? What will that release say? Will it give an itinerary?
Well, there's two potential documents. One is the receipt that is left at the house or with the subject of the search warrant at the time, saying, hey, we collected this, that, computers, documents, letters, trash, and also there's an inventory that is prepared, a sworn statement by the agent that goes back to the judge that issued the search warrant, so the judge knows what, if anything, was found. But the receipt, which is what is left with the search warrant at Mar-a-Lago that the former president should have, should detail exactly what was found and probably where it was found. And that's what the former president already has. And that one of those two documents, or probably both, are what the Attorney General was talking about going into court to unseal these documents, because only a judge can unseal a document that has previously been ordered to be sealed.
Okay, Irv, so I'm sure there's some precedent here, but certainly atypical. On Monday, you get a former president saying, hey, my house was just raided by the Department of Justice. Then Thursday, the Attorney General, Merrick Garland, again, Chicago-born, almost being forced to come out and say, yes, this did indeed happen, defend the actions of the Department of Justice and the FBI, and then say we're going to unseal some of the findings here. I mean, this is pretty rare territory we're in, right?
Well, let me tell you what's atypical about this, Brad, and that is that the subject of the search warrant doesn't usually come out in public and say, hey, guess what? I was just, my property, my home, my safe, my bedroom was just searched by the FBI. We don't usually have that in any case, let alone a high profile person like the former president. Documents are typically unsealed once a prosecution has begun. That's usually when the U.S. attorney goes into court and say, Judge, the person's been arrested. We're moving to unseal the entire file at that point in time. So to answer your question, is it unusual to have something unsealed at this point in time? Absolutely, it's unusual. But I think he's basically saying, hey, listen, there's no need to keep this person secret. There's no need to keep the search warrant secret, since the subject of the search warrant has already released it to the public. That is, the fact that there was a search warrant and a search.
If this is a chess match, which on some levels it certainly is, it's not a game, because we're dealing with high crimes and misdemeanors, they may say. I mean, we're talking about potentially national security sensitive documents that were removed from the White House when a president left office. But if this is a chess match, what is Donald Trump's next move?
Well, he's going to wait and see what is released by the judge, what is unsealed. And at that point in time, we will know his lawyers, and he will sit down and say, listen, are we on the defensive or do we go on the offensive? The search warrant is written in ink. It's not going to be changed. It's what the department, what a judge authorized the FBI agents to do. So it probably also says when they can do it. During daylight hours. You can't just go in the middle of the night. That's typically on a search warrant. There's usually an attachment to the search warrant that talks about what the agents are supposed to look for. And that's not going to change because that's part of the search warrant. It's usually attachment number 1 to a search warrant. The attachment will also tell us what crime it is that the agents think has been committed by a statutory citation in the attachment that will let us know what crime it is the FBI thinks has occurred, or the reason that there had to be a search warrant because a certain federal statute may have been violated.
Can Trump now, Team Trump, file some type of motion to thwart this release, or what is there any tactical move prior to getting this release of information, or no, is it already set in motion and done?
Well, legally speaking, yes, he could respond to this motion to unseal by objecting to it, saying that it violates his constitutional rights, his rights of privacy. As a political matter, I don't think he can do that simply because he's already opened up the door himself and basically challenged the Department of Justice and the FBI to come up with a legitimate reason why his house had to be searched. So he's going to have to sit back. If I was his attorney, I'd say, listen, we opened the door. We've got to take the consequences. We chose to go public. Now we can't ask him to ask the judge not to issue an order to unseal this because, well, that's our position. So I doubt that we're going to see any filings by the former president. I think once the items are unsealed and they're released to the media and the public, I'd be interested to see what statement he's going to make at that time as to whether or not he's going to, start going on the defensive or try to, take a path saying, he still thinks that he's the victim. He still thinks that things were planted. It'll be interesting to see what his lawyers advise him to do and whether or not he accepts that advice.
Okay, we had a hard serve by President Trump, really opening the door, a hard serve on Monday, saying his home, in essence, had been raided. And now a hard return, a volley back from the Attorney General. Irv Miller, you are always a man going places. I have a feeling in real time you are going to a place. So we appreciate you taking some time to speak with us on the stream. Thank you this afternoon, Irv.
Thank you, Brad. Always a pleasure. Thank you.
We appreciate Irv Miller, our legal eagle here at CBS 2 News. Former prosecutor. He's played all sides of the law and has been a key legal analyst behind some CBS hit dramas. We also appreciate Pat Brady, former federal prosecutor, state prosecutor, head of the Illinois Republican Party, for joining us. If you want to know exactly what we're talking about, it happened 20 or so minutes ago. The Attorney General spoke to the American people. This is the first time we heard from the Department of Justice or the FBI in regards to what happened in Mar-a-Lago, the president's home in Florida, former President Donald Trump's home. The former president classified it earlier this week as a raid. Sources told multiple media outlets, including CBS News, that what was being sought were documents, potentially some that had significant national security relevance, documents removed from the White House to a private residence upon Mr. Trump leaving office. So the Attorney General, here several days later, Trump spoke Monday. The Attorney General spoke 22 minutes ago. Let's listen to that statement in its entirety.
Since I became Attorney General, I have made clear that the Department of Justice will speak through its court filings and its work. Just now, the Justice Department has filed a motion in the Southern District of Florida to unseal a search warrant and property receipt relating to a court-approved search that the FBI conducted earlier this week. That search was of premises located in Florida belonging to the former president. The department did not make any public statements on the day of the search. The former president publicly confirmed the search that evening, as is his right. Copies of both the warrant and the FBI property receipt were provided on the day of the search to the former president's counsel, who was on site during the search. The search warrant was authorized by a federal court upon the required finding of probable cause. The property receipt is a document that federal law requires law enforcement agents to leave with the property owner. The department filed the motion to make public the warrant and receipt in light of the former president's public confirmation of the search, the surrounding circumstances, and the substantial public interest in this matter. Faithful adherence to the rule of law is the bedrock principle of the Justice Department and of our democracy. Upholding the rule of law means applying the law evenly, without fear or favor. Under my watch, that is precisely what the Justice Department is doing. All Americans are entitled to the even-handed application of the law, to due process of the law, and to the presumption of innocence. Much of our work is by necessity conducted out of the public eye. We do that to protect the constitutional rights of all Americans and to protect the integrity of our investigations. Federal law, long-standing department rules, and our ethical obligations prevent me from providing further details as to the basis of the search at this time. There are, however, certain points I want you to know. First, I personally approved the decision to seek a search warrant in this matter. Second, the department does not take such a decision lightly. Where possible, it is standard practice to seek less intrusive means as an alternative to a search and to narrowly scope any search that is undertaken. Third, let me address recent unfounded attacks on the professionalism of the FBI and Justice Department agents and prosecutors. I will not stand by silently when their integrity is unfairly attacked. The men and women of the FBI and the Justice Department are dedicated, patriotic public servants. Every day, they protect the American people from violent crime, terrorism, and other threats to their safety while safeguarding our civil rights. They do so at great personal sacrifice and risk to themselves. I am honored to work alongside them. This is all I can say right now. More information will be made available in the appropriate way and at the appropriate time. Thank you.
And the Attorney General, 86th U.S. Attorney General, Chicago-born Merrick Garland, coming out today with a 3 or so minute statement, basically defending his people and doubling down on what was done was all on the up and up after the president came out Monday saying, my home was raided, the former president, Donald Trump, Mar-a-Lago. We know sources tell CBS News and other outlets that what was being sought was sensitive, potentially boxes of sensitive documents taken to the compound there post-presidency. We will now find out what was received in that search warrant, because according to the Attorney General, the search warrant and a list of what was retrieved is now in front of a court, a judge in Florida, and a receipt of that she'll be coming out soon. We will certainly have more on this coming up at the news 4 o'clock. So join me, Jim Williams, and Marie on the TV side of things. For now, we appreciate you joining us on the stream. I'm Brad Edwards. Now back to the stream.